Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Welcome to another episode of Modern Chiropractic Mastery. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, and today we are going to talk about becoming elite. And I'm going to do that with Dr. Benjamin Stevens, and we're going to dive into what he's got going on with his elite model operating system of care. We're going to dive into the clinical side, but we're also going to wrap it around with some mindset and business and things of that nature. But he's really done a great job over the years with continuing ed and making it really impactful and fresh and trying to put it all together. One of the things we really dive in today on this episode is how so many DCs are getting trained in a lot of great techniques, a lot of great skill sets, but having a hard time really packaging it together to where you're able to seamlessly implement that in your clinic and for your patients, right? I think a lot of DCs are getting overwhelmed with so many certifications and trainings and having a hard time to synthesize it into their practice. And so Ben does a great job of talking about that today. And we talk about something he's putting together that I think you're going to be very interested in. I'm excited to be a part of it as well, because I think it's something that it's needed, right? It's 2026 now. I had a podcast maybe a year or two ago where I went through kind of the three phases of, I called it sports chiropractors, but you could have renamed it evidence-informed chiropractors or whatever. But I had mentioned kind of phase one was like you had some outliers in the 80s and 90s doing some good work with sports injuries and the like. But a lot of that was around manipulation, some modalities like electrical stim and things like that, and then some low-level rehab stuff, maybe some early Craig Liebenson stuff. But they were doing good. They were assessing injuries well, for the most part, and that was their phase one. And then phase two is kind of like when I graduated and came out, where we were now still strong on palpation manipulation, and that was a key focus. And then strong on soft tissue, whether it was active release technique, Graston technique, but getting real strong on soft tissue. And then we layered on some rehab, right, as kind of a third part, but not the core product of what we offered. The core product was still evaluation and assessments, and then obviously joint palpation and manipulation, and then some soft tissue. And then there's been this phase three, which has been heavy on rehab and maybe forgetting a little bit about joint palpation manipulation and some soft tissue, and heavy on rehab, and then heavy on a bunch of different things, right? Like 8 different things, and having a really hard time synthesizing it. I think a lot of these docs are great, and I love what their skill set is for sure. But I think now that we've realized with this phase three crowd is we need a little bit better application of it. And Ben and I talk about that today on this episode, and really what he's putting together to help DCs to learn and synthesize and apply to their practice. So before I do dive into that interview with Ben, I just want to make mention, one of our awesome collaborators is Crossfields Interior and Architecture. I use them for my office, the remodel. I wish I knew them back in 2013 when I bought my office space and started it, but I did a nice refresh in 2022, and they did a great job. They're just phenomenal at great design and really having a strategic facility planning and design for healthcare practices. And it's not just what color paint and what kind of furniture. That's a nice part of it for sure, but it's also flow and architecture. And it really is specific to a chiropractic practice, and it does have an ROI. So if you're in the process of either building out a new space, or you need to retrofit a space, or you just need a remodel like I did, so visit them at crossfieldsdesign.com. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Benjamin Stevens. All right, welcome to the show. I got Dr. Benjamin Stevens here, and excited to dive into some great topics clinically, professionally, tying it into practice growth and all things in between. But before we dive in, introduce yourself and let's go from there.
All right. My name is Dr. Ben Stevens or Dr. Benjamin Stevens online. When you have a very common name, you got to find some way to make it findable online. So I'm
You could have
Dr.
done it. You could have done a middle name too, right?
God, yeah, I believe me. There's variants of that. Dr. Benjamin J. Stevens is my name. Yeah, I'm a chiropractor in British Columbia, Canada. Grew up in New Brunswick. Went to school at Palmer West in California. Ended up back here eventually in British Columbia, and haven't left since.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And it's, you and I cross paths through a connection through Mark King and a lot of the work you've done on the continuing ed side. More than just the continuing ed phrase has a lot of labels to it or misconceptions. I think you're more than continuing ed. People think of like the state associations and stuff and boring stuff. You got some awesome material. It is continuing ed, but it's with a flavor. I know you've got quite an extensive list of topics that you teach that you bring in, different experts in. And it's just really been cool to see you build a content library of experts around that. But before we dive into that stuff, tell us a little bit about your kind of backstory of how you went from, obviously a chiropractor practicing full time, doing all that, to now really on the strong side of educator.
Yeah, I mean, just like most people's path, it's never a straight line. You don't really expect to end up where you eventually do end up. For me, I mean, I went to school to become a chiro because I found it very, very interesting. And that's, I don't really have some big evangelical story like a lot of chiros do. I had a couple of good experiences with chiros, but the reality is I got done studying the human body through a kinesiology degree. I was a personal trainer from 16 up through strength and conditioning in university. And I kind of got to the point of going like, well, you can't do a lot with a kinesiology degree. I what do I want to go do now? My sister was a medical doctor, and she went, "You don't really want to do that. You're going to be sticking your pinky finger up an old guy's ass in your first year in school. It's not what you want to do." And I went, "Okay, great," and kind of explored a lot of different things. And I ended up looking at Cairo as being like a big thing that I wanted to do, and just looked at the curriculum, visited schools, kind of talked to a lot of people, and I went, "Yeah, this is a pretty sweet career path." And for me, sports was a huge part of my upbringing. I played hockey my whole life and played every varsity sport out there from, basketball, volleyball, played a little bit of soccer, played competitive baseball, all those sorts of things. So sports was something I was really quite interested in. And that led me to Palmer West. At the time, Palmer West had a very, very strong sports program. And so that's how I ended up there. And this is, kind of going to connect, but essentially in my first semester there, I met the guy who you probably know, Stephen Capobianco, another Canadian, the guy who ended up being the kind of medical director for Rock Tape. He became a very close mentor of mine. I ended up working quite a bit with Rock Tape while I was in school. Plus, I was on field all the time with the Sport Council. And by the time I graduated from school, I had this very keen interest in being around continuing ed. And when I moved back to Canada, Steve essentially said, "You need to go instruct for us because Canada is just starting their Rock Tape educational component." And so I actually started teaching continuing ed courses when I was 8 months out of school. So very, very
Nice.
early on, teaching primarily people who are much more experienced than me. And it was a trial by fire. And I've been going ever since.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where sometimes you gotta. Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach talks about making it up and making it real, and sometimes you just got to put yourself out there and make it real, make it something that you get better at. It's no different than the first kind of few months when you become a chiropractor. You're 26, maybe 25, 27, and you're trying to tell this 55-year-old about their health, and it's looking at you like, it's like, what did you just graduate from, elementary school? And you're telling me. So you just got
Yeah.
to do it, right? You just got to do it.
Yeah. No, it was a good, yeah, I mean, you never see these kind of things coming. There's a lot of luck involved in, just creating a network and getting to where you end up eventually. And, there's a lot of hard work. Obviously, you end up controlling your luck. But I mean, I was just very lucky that I crossed paths with a lot of people that were good mentors for me. I crossed paths with a lot of people that really managed to create a very forward thinking and intellectual and hardworking environment for me to kind of come through Cairo school in the first part of my career. I'm forever thankful that that's how it went, especially now because I've been spending a lot of time on Instagram lately talking to a lot of people who are new grads or even who are in the first 5 years of practice, that they're just completely isolated. They have no guidance, no anyone. They kind of stuck to themselves during school, and then they rent out a room in a gym somewhere to open their practice, and then they've got no support network. They've got no
Yeah.
peers. They've got no anything. And so I feel very, even though I didn't do it intentionally, I feel super happy that that's how it ended up going for me.
Chiropractors, if your website traffic or Google Maps visibility has felt a little unpredictable lately, you're not imagining it. A lot is changing behind the scenes. AI is reshaping how search results show up. Competition in the map pack is getting tougher, and simply ranking well does not always translate into new patients. That's why Propel Marketing and Design is hosting a free chiropractic SEO workshop. You'll learn what's actually changing with Google Maps, how AI is impacting the way patients find and choose clinics, and what small, realistic updates you can make this year to stay visible and competitive. This is not a high level talk or a bunch of jargon. It's a practical step by step workshop built for busy clinic owners who want clear direction and next steps they can actually implement. Save your spot for free at propelyourcompany.com/MCM SCO workshop 2026. And we'll see you there. One thing that kind of crossed my radar was when you shared your story of struggle and then
Yeah.
overcoming that and persevering and getting to where you're at now. If you don't mind, I'd love to have the audience hear a little bit of that.
Sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, so towards my parents, I grew up in a very religious household. My parents are part-time missionaries. And
Mm.
so my father's an engineer by trade, and he would travel the world to kind of impoverished places and countries and essentially help to set up infrastructure that would help save people from poverty in certain ways. And so when I was in school, they were going back and forth to Bolivia over and over again. I had never gone with them on any of these trips. And we just so happened to have a slightly longer than usual summer break during, I was coming into like ninth quarter or something like that at Palmer West.
Mhm.
So, the back end, I was getting close to clinic. And my parents, essentially, they were going to Bolivia that summer and they convinced me to go. And so, short version was I went to South America about halfway through that little trip, which was only about 4 weeks. Something started to go pretty wrong. I started to feel not great, couldn't really tell what it was, had a whole bunch of symptoms. Ended up having to get evacuated out of where we were, ended up in a little single room hospital in a tiny town in Bolivia. Got they only spoke Quechua there, and so no one had a sweet clue what was going on besides the one guy who was leading this missions trip, and he couldn't stay with me, and so I ended up in this hospital there for a little while. Got well enough to get out of that hospital to fly back to California. Ended up in the hospital at Stanford while I was in school as well, and the best guess of essentially what happened to me was that I got meningitis. And so I ended up losing 27 pounds in about 2.5 weeks. I went from 180 to 152 pounds on a 6 foot frame. So
Yeah.
not a small weight loss by any means. So I lost a large amount of my body weight, kidney failure, organ failure, heart murmur, lungs were filling with fluid, could barely stand up straight, had the meningitis headache, got really massively kind of overhauled neurologically. I lost the ability to handwrite, redeveloped a speech impediment that I had that was pretty severe as a child. I was pretty close to kicking it. Wasn't doing well, to say the
Yeah.
least. And so I was in the hospital for a little while at Stanford, which I'm forever thankful for them because they just nursed me right back to health, or nursed me back to as close to health as they could, and then kind of kicked me to the curb and went, "There's nothing. You're not sick anymore. You're just kind of messed." And so, yeah, that was literally right in the middle of school, and most of my classmates didn't even know because it happened mostly over one of our summers, and I
Mhm.
came back just looking absolutely miserable, and things were kind of off. But I stuck to myself mostly, so most people didn't really find out about it. But yeah, I ended up having a real rough latter half of school, to say the least. I couldn't concentrate, could barely hold conversation. It wasn't great. Most of my fine motor skills kind of disappeared. I was literally tripping walking down the hall. Like, wasn't good.
Yeah. Yeah. And then ultimately, stuck through healing and doing certain things to get there and getting full recovery and going there. Now, did you get kind of any, learn anything from that? Any context of like,
Tons.
yeah.
One of the it's funny because I posted this on Instagram as the most vulnerable thing I've ever posted on Instagram. And I just decided I was going to start kind of going for it and sharing a lot about my life and my kind of process,
Yeah.
and the things that I feel like I can do for our industry. And this was just within the last 6 weeks that I finally shared this. But one of the things that was really kind of I always found personally, I was one of those people that found school rather interesting. I was never cramming before tests. I found it relatively easy. I actually liked the content enough that I was just kind of constantly studying to understand on my own. And so for me, school is relatively easy. I was, near the top of my class the entire time I was going through school. Wasn't stressed, wasn't losing sleep. Found school pretty fun. And then I was going out every single weekend to go to sporting events or working with rock tape or taking a course. Like I was really thriving going through school. And then one of the things that meningitis just wiped out was my brain's capacity to handle all of that. It just
Mhm.
all of a sudden, I literally just couldn't think straight. It was, and there's probably some psychological overlay to it as well. When you almost die, it's not real easy to concentrate on a multiple choice board exam. Um, but well, I mean, one of the
Shocker.
big, you're right. I mean, the crazy part is I was supposed to be studying for Canadian board exams. I had part A's and B's coming up, and within 6 weeks of getting back after that, I had to get on a plane to Montreal and go do my board exams. And I literally didn't study for them, not even a
Mhm.
single bit. I took a red eye to Montreal, slammed a Red Bull, did my part A's and my part B's, and passed with flying colors. So I'm just pretty happy about that.
Nice.
But it was a real risky time to get sick, I'll tell you.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, one of the things that it kind of took away was a natural mental ease with which I found going through school. And a lot of that, I think certain people kind of hated me for that. They hated me during school and they almost hate when I say it now because I think certain people have different strengths. My strength was just kind of intellectualization of a lot of the material, being able to see the structure for what it was and fitting it all together. And that all just got thrown out the window. And so a big part of what I ended up needing to rely on were a lot of the kind of alternative skills in my life and my network and my people. And I needed to figure out not just the specifics and the nuance and the content and how to take all that and make it make sense for a patient. I had to actually start just kind of copying what a lot of people around me were doing and trying to literally say the words they said, do what they did, and take their approach and apply it to what I was doing in practice. Because I was just a fog for
Mhm.
so long. It took me the better part of 7 years to get back to
Oh,
normal.
wow.
Not an easy recovery by any means, and everyone in my life, they could tell. Um, and that's the kind of thing that just I went from relying on an over intellectualization of everything I did to, wow, there's a lot more to this career than knowing everything there is to know, than having all the different little pieces of the puzzle. The masters out there don't understand every piece of the puzzle to the nth degree, but they do know how to put it all together really well. And so I needed to start surrounding myself with a lot of really smart people that were not just smart as far as book smart or researchers or the sciences, that they were really good at a lot of the other things as well. And I was very fortunate that up until that point in school, I had surrounded myself with so many good people already that I just needed to start leaning on them. And that's really what helped me get through the rest of school, and it's what helped me do really well in practice when I first started.
Yeah, it's amazing to be able to do that, and I think that's one of the things that, what I love seeing you and I've been communicating a lot over the last 3 or 4 months, and I love what you're doing is you're essentially synthesizing information for people to be able to digest it and apply it to the practice because there's so many good things out there, and I think it gets siloed a lot,
Yep.
right? And I think you would agree with that, and then ultimately the clinician is left to try to piece it together in a way that would work in a would work in a way that would help patients, would work in a way that would fit in a clinical model, can make a business out of it. It can, it's just a lot, and it's been cool to see you be able to do that. And before we dive into some of the specifics, I wanted to ask you like what you've seen as far as like the gaps in chiropractic or musculoskeletal care that you commonly see that maybe has kind of driven you to try to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, that's a broad question. I do feel like one of the things that is probably the main gap on a lot of people is it's a mindset. And I don't mean like they're missing a specific mindset. I think one of the things that our industry and most industries within healthcare are kind of guilty of is they start from a solution and look for the problem. And rather than starting from the problem and looking for the solution. And I think if you're a great clinician, you start from a very patient-centric approach to what does the patient ultimately need, in what amount, for how long, in what doses, and how does it need to be framed for them to achieve their goal and for me to be the Sherpa that helps them get there. And I think one of the things that has been very interesting for a lot of people over the years is they go and take a million different courses that are based on a solution when they don't necessarily do a great job of understanding the problems. And so they have a hard time tying them together. And so what you end up with for a lot of people, especially 5 years into practice, is they go, oh, I need a technique for this. I need a technique for for that. I need a technique for this. And they end up kind of, you know, proverbially standing in the corner holding a giant pile of tools, and they don't really have a good concept of when to pick out each one. And it becomes this big kind of jumbled mess that leaves us lacking excellence. We have a lot of good tools and we know how to use a lot of them, but we don't really know how the whole thing fits together. We don't have kind of a model or operating system. And so for a lot of people, what they end up doing is certification chasing. They end up chasing new tools, or they want a new thing for their practice. Shockwave. I
Yeah.
posted about this recently, so I'm just up about it right now. But if people are just like, "Oh, I gotta get a shockwave. That's gonna help my practice." And I go, "Okay, what problem do your patients have that shockwave is the thing that's gonna fix it that you don't have another solution for?"
There's probably
But
gonna
that's
be a shock. There's probably gonna be a shockwave ad during this episode too. So
sure. So
just warning the audience.
and to be fair, you know, like I've had shockwave on. I've had shockwave within the last month on myself, and I've done shockwave on a lot of people. It's just to me, it's that everyone obsessing about shockwave in certain scenarios is just a symptom of what I'm talking about. Of most people kind of looking for the solutions when they haven't really defined the problem all that well.
Yeah.
And a pain or a problem that is well defined naturally leads you to where the solution lies. And so I think a lot of the time the gaps are not that we don't have enough tools or enough things to do. A lot of the gaps are our mindsets. We feel like we have a certain skill set, and so we scan the horizon for problems that we can solve, and we end up finding problems we might not be the best at solving and try to solve them anyway. And I think a really good practice is built around really good problem solution fit. And the easiest way to do that when developing a career is to constantly assess what the problem is and go looking for the solution rather than go seeking solutions and then hoping it's going to solve problems you haven't actually assessed yet.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And it's one thing that's like, I know there's been a few times in my career, in my clinic, where, um, there's all kinds of things, right? And like you said, there's all kinds of solutions. And a lot of times I've had to sit back and reassess what my clinic is, what my patient base is, what it is. And that's happened a few times when I've decided to add something is I will kind of audit like, okay, what are the things that I'm seeing in my patients where I keep on thinking to myself like, yeah, I don't have a real good solution to that. And if I see that or I feel that kind of, recurring constantly, it kind of puts up my spidey senses a little bit that we're missing something. But I don't need to load up my clinic with everything and then try to figure it out from there.
That's what a lot of people do. A lot of people they add features rather than focusing on the core of exactly what they're doing and who it's going to best serve, and just putting all their energy into making that really excellent. We like to add a lot of features. And to be fair, I think a lot of features, especially as you move on in your career, allow you to be ever so slightly better, but there's a point of diminishing returns whereby you don't need every tool in the toolbox. You don't need a giant spectrum of things that you can do. You need to be truly excellent at a few core things, and then you can add the extras on top of that to get, 1% or 2% better here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. We were, one of the things that dry needling. So in state of Florida, for a long time, chiropractors needed the full acupuncture, which was like 200 hours. And so not many chiropractors did dry needling unless they were already acupuncture certified. But that changed. And so a lot of chiropractors are getting dry needling, and it gets brought up to me. And I was like, I love dry needling, and I got a couple good PTs in the area that I've referred to over the years, and I'm just going to continue to do that because there's definitely a handful of patients here and there that could use it, or ask for it, but it's just not something I know I need to add. I just honestly just would rather refer it out at that point.
Yeah, and to me, that's a sign of a mature practitioner is if they see a tool, they could figure out how to use it, but they'd rather know the concepts of when and how it's needed and then refer out to someone that is their thing.
Yeah.
And that's very much been me.
And I love dry needling. I do. I do. It's just I can't do
Oh, yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not allowed to do it here in BC, but I mean, like, yeah, I refer people for it all the time. Physios do it here. And so I refer to physios for it. And the occasional acupuncturist as well, depending on what it is.
Let's take a short break from today's episode to tell you about the best decision I've made in my clinic in the last 10 years, and that has been adding shockwave therapy to our clinic. The outcomes have been really impressive. Certain conditions we were struggling with in the past, we're now seeing results with the shockwave therapy for that. And second of all, the ROI has been really good. When you make a big investment in something, you want to see a return, and we're seeing that return in clinical outcomes and in our investment, and that's been really nice to see. I chose Keenest Medical for 4 reasons. One is the technology is top notch. You have to have great technology. There's a lot out there that isn't quite up to snuff. The second thing is they have a really good clinical training. They have an exclusive partnership with Academy of Shockwave Excellence so that you can become clinically proficient in shockwave. You do need to get skilled at it. I think that's a big differentiator between practices that are getting great results and seeing the ROI is they have a great clinical aspect to that as well. So you want to get trained appropriately. Third is they have in-house service team for all of your technical support, which is key when you're investing in a machine like this. And then lastly, they have a very in-depth marketing and business support for you so that you can launch this into your practice effectively, that you can get that ROI on it, that you can get the clinical outcomes. And they also have really good financing options if you need that. So go to kinasmedical.com, KINAS medical.com, mention MCM podcast and receive a free shockwave in practice book with a purchase of a unit. So that's kinasmedical.com, KINAS medical.com, and mention MCM podcast. So, give me a little bit of background on, your company and when did you start like officially the company and offering continuing ed and some of the background of that.
Yeah, so as much as I owe Steve Capobianco a huge debt of gratitude for getting me into the continuing ed world and being a big mentor of mine, the same thing can be said about Michael Maxwell. And so he's one of my best friends. He lives on Vancouver Island up here in BC, in Victoria, runs a great practice out there. So he started Somatic Senses, started it in 2003 when he was in university as a scratch your own itch endeavor. One of the things, especially back then, I think it's a little less common now, but especially back then that was really common is that people went to kind of college or university and they ended up in this little silo where they didn't actually really get exposed to the real world all that much, especially in university because it wasn't very hands-on. And so he was at UBC doing his like human kinetics degree and was just not getting any real world experience. And so he started bringing people in and essentially just paying them a little bit and then selling tickets to friends to kind of cover the cost. And eventually figured out if he sold enough tickets, he'd actually make a little bit of money doing it and could keep going. And so that's how Somatic Senses as a business got started. And that was 2003. So here we are 23 years later.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that happened along the line is that just kind of grew ever so slowly, and it was never, a huge business. And then when I moved here to BC, I had the same imposter syndrome plus a brain that wasn't really working all that well. So when I moved to BC and I was starting my own practice, I tried to take every last bit of continuing ed that I could. And because Somatic Senses was founded here in British Columbia, that meant I was going to a lot of Somatic Senses courses. So as a result of that, within the first 2 years or 3 years of me being here, Mike and I became very, very good friends. And so I saw him at basically every single course that he did. And at a certain point, I think about 3 years in, something like that, I walked into a room for a course and Mike looked at me and he went, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "You could teach this course. Why are you even here?" And it was kind of this light bulb moment for both of us where I was like, "Oh, we're kindred spirits here. Like we just want to keep learning and just keep getting better." And so that led to a conversation where I found out that he was just kind of getting, a little burnt out on doing so much continuing ed because it was a pretty big endeavor to put on top of, he had bought into a practice recently. And so he said, "Hey, do you want to be my business partner?" Because I was considering dialing back anyway, but I'd rather have someone like you who's just really all about education and kind of growth. And I went, "That sounds great." And so I joined him as 50-50 partner, and that was probably in 2015 to 2017 range. And then in the ensuing years, he spent a lot more time. He's a DNS instructor and ended up being an instructor for neurodynamic solutions as well with Michael Shacklock. And so he ended up doing a lot to kind of get more and more involved in those worlds. And so Somatic Senses became very, very saturated with those as a result. And at a certain point, I went, "Mike, like you're spending a lot of time doing those things. And I love those things. I mean, I've taken like 12 or 13 DNS courses. I've taken neurodynamics 5 times. I love those things." I go, "But like, I'm not an instructor for them. And I don't really want to have Somatic Senses be a DNS brand. How about you go and do those things and I'll keep Somatic Senses as what it is and turn it over." And so what Somatic Senses essentially has is this kind of ongoing revolving door where I go and try to find the people who are doing excellent clinical education, things that are really forward and very I'm not going to say very evidence-based, but very evidence-informed. And the people that you and I both know that are just excellent in this industry, I go find them and try to host courses with them. And so as a result, Somatic Senses every 2 or 3 years has just this evolving roster of new people that are speaking, some really smart minds. And I mean, I just get to be friends with and learn from the best people in the industry. So it's still a scratch your own itch kind of business.
No, it's cool. It's been neat to kind of see under the hood a little bit of what you got going on and some of your vision, and we will get to that in a little bit. But before we do, talk to me about your elite clinical model and what that is and what the ultimate goal is for the chiropractor.
Yeah, so the elite clinical model, I'm calling it an operating system at this point, essentially was meant to be a solution to what we had talked about a little bit earlier, which is that a lot of people are out there collecting a lot of tools, collecting a lot of certifications, but they're still kind of just doing pretty okay in
Yeah.
practice. And that's a phrase that I'm saying often in the last month because I'm having a lot of conversations about this model and about the mastermind that I've built around it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are just like, they're 10 years into practice, they're 5 years, they're 15 years, 20, whatever it is. And they're like, yeah, I'm doing pretty okay. I've done, and the list usually goes like, I've done ART, I've done a couple DNS courses, like I'm familiar with McKenzie, I've yada, yada, yada. They go on down the list and they go, it's not really like, but it hasn't congealed into a thing, into something that I am supremely confident in and I'm good at communicating about and good at building a business around. So they're 50 to 80% booked on and off with variable degrees of predictability. And they're getting good enough patient outcomes, but they're really not building something excellent. And so the whole idea behind this model was I essentially went, okay, what do all, because I get to know a lot of really great people in this industry as a result of this. I've been to about 500 seminars and I've taught about 200 myself. So I get to be surrounded by the best of the best, and I absolutely love it, and I feel very privileged by that. But one of the things I essentially got to do is zoom out and go, what do all the best of the best have in common? And what do some of the good people have, but the others don't? And I essentially wanted to build kind of a an environment and a curriculum in a place where the best could come together and focus on the things that they all have in common. And so the elite clinical operating system was meant to kind of go through a lot of the people that I know and go, what are the tools that a lot of them use? What are the lenses a lot of them look through? How do most of them communicate? How do most of them go about doing this? Why are they in such insanely high demand and so insanely good at their job? And other people that have a list of similar tools aren't congealing into this big excellent thing.
Mhm.
And in essence, it came down to me building, what I'm calling the elite clinical operating system, which is just based on all these specific foundations that I feel like a lot of these people have. And I could talk about what those specifics are, but that's the intention, was to build this operating system of, I want to get all the people who are the best at these things to come together and build something so people can learn not just all the good tools, but how to be truly excellent using all of them and build a career around that.
I want to tell you about something my clinic has recently integrated because I think it's relevant to much of what we talk about on this show. If you're maxed out and can't take new patients, or patients are getting better and just leaving, you don't have a clinical problem, you have a systems problem. That's what P2P Pathway solves for you. It's a model that takes your patients from rehab into ongoing strength and performance programming inside your existing practice using Tonal's AI driven equipment. No trainer required, no separate gym build out. The result is recurring monthly revenue that doesn't depend on how many patients you can personally see in a day. They run live seminars where they walk you through the entire system, hands on, in person. Attendees also get exclusive discounts on equipment, including Tonal, that you can't get anywhere else. Seats are limited. The link is in the show notes. If you're serious about adding a recurring revenue stream to your practice, this is worth your 2 days. So check out www.p2ppathway.com. What would be some of the aspects of the elite clinical operating system?
I mean, there's not that many of them, so it's very easy
Yeah.
to just list them all off. And so one of them is understanding pain. And
Yeah.
so by that, I mean actually understanding pain science. I think pain science
Mhm.
as a phrase has gotten kind of a bad rap in the last few years because a lot of people have felt that it's gotten really loose. So it's understanding pain science. And Dimitri Simakopoulos is coming into this mastermind to teach about pain
Mhm.
because he's one of the best at taking this pain, making it applicable and making it understandable. So pain in the biopsychosocial model is part of it. Joint mechanics and manipulation, mobilization, whatever that might be, is part of it. There's very few chiros that aren't actually very good at that, that are really truly at the elite level. Brett Winchester is coming in
Yeah.
to help with that. There is Neurodynamics is one of those things that if you haven't taken a neurodynamics course from Michael Shacklock and his group, you kind of don't know what you don't know until you show up.
Mhm.
Neurodynamics is one of those things that is very, very excellent. And I have a hard time trusting someone to do a good job with nerve issues unless they've taken that course. And I know that's an aggressive statement, and I have nothing to gain from saying that because they teach all over the world and most people aren't going to come through me. But again, neurodynamics. So we have pain, we have joint mechanics, we have neurodynamics, and Michael Shacklock himself is going to come in and teach that one. We have soft tissue. And so soft tissue is Michael Chivers is going to be coming in to teach that one from FR. I'm trying to think. They have a whole bunch of different names now, but
Mhm.
functional range release. So he's going to be coming in and teaching that one. One of the smartest minds in that world, if not the smartest mind. Because be entirely honest, I just started at the top of the list of who's going to be the best at teaching
Yeah.
these things. I just called all of them, and no one said no, which is nice. So yeah, we got Dimitri teaching pain, Brett with the joint mechanics, Michael Chivers with soft tissue, Michael Shacklock with neurodynamics, rehab and strength and conditioning and exercise. That's a big one.
Yeah.
The reason I say that's a big one is because that is one of the biggest gaps that a lot of practitioners have because they don't come from that kind of background. And yet it is one of the strongest bits of evidence we have for almost everything we do is exercise. And Cody DMAC is going to be coming in and helping with exercise rehab.
Just played golf with him last month.
Oh, Cody.
Yeah, yeah, we were down at the MPI Sports Summit in Daytona. So,
Nice. Well, I'm
great
glad I
guy,
wasn't.
great guy.
I'm terrible at golf.
Yeah,
But yeah,
so are
great,
we.
great guy. And so, yeah, so we've got pain, joint mechanics, soft tissue, neurodynamics, strength and conditioning, exercise rehab, that kind of stuff, which Cody is teaching. And then we've got essentially McKenzie. So like end range loading, repeated motions, directional preference, those type of things. And Tom Lotus is teaching that one. He's a little bit less of a familiar name to some people, but for the people that know him, very smart guy, taught at the University of Pittsburgh. And then the last thing, and this one's kind of tied in with the exercise part of it and the movement aspect, is stabilization strategies. And that's very much a DNS lens. And so Michael Rantala is coming into the mastermind to help teach that one. And then the thing that and this is how we met, the thing that I'm very passionate about is that this is not going to be taught as a selection of tools that you just have to figure out how to use on your own. We are going to have integration modules. And so I have a list of people who I would call expert integrators that know all of these things, know them very well, that I'm going to be bringing them in once or twice a year. And we're going to be doing nothing but case studies and integration on how to take all of these things and clinically make them congeal into a truly excellent package. And then the last ingredient on top of all of this is business, is the actual career built around this, which is how we got to know each other, was through this.
Yeah.
And so there's a big difference between having the right tools and knowing how to talk about them. There's a big difference between being able to help everyone that walks through your doors and being able to build a business around that. And a lot of that is it's marketing, it's patient communication, it's report of findings, it's all the little things in your business that people don't like to think about, but are really one of the main predictors as to whether or not they're going to have a thriving business or a pretty okay business. And that's where you and I got to know each other because you're going to be involved in this as well. And you're going to be interspersed throughout it, which I'm very excited about. And that's actually one of the things when I'm telling people about the mastermind that they're most excited about is like, oh God, like this is great. It's actually clinical and business intertwined in a meaningful way rather than us kind of pretending they don't exist together.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you went to the top of each of those aspects to find the number one guy. Truth be told, I was probably your third option, and the other two said no. But I said I'll take anything.
I'd be interested to know who you think number one and number two are then, because it's not the case.
But no, I'm excited because it's something that I've seen over the last, say, 9 years that I've been doing MCM stuff, whether it's the podcast or the coaching or mastermind on the business side was, my audience is the same audience as yours, just great clinical doctors and even sometimes, obviously physical therapists and stuff, but they're just really good at what they do. And one of the biggest problems is putting it together,
Yes.
the congealing of it and making a business out of it. And honestly, not being ashamed of making a good business out of it. I think that's
Right.
like a subconscious, sometimes not even subconscious thing that really good doctors that are skilled have a problem with. And it's
Huge problem.
okay to be great clinically. You can be very patient centered and you can do very well financially. There's nothing wrong with that.
And you should.
Yeah.
Not just you can, you should. To me, they have to go hand in hand. If you are, and I've had this conversation a lot in the last few weeks, if you're an absolutely excellent doc and you have racked up credit card debt and you're worried about paying your bills, you are not bringing your best self to every single client. You have a lens installed in your career that shouldn't be there of financial stress. You have a lens installed about a scarcity mindset. And that's going to change a lot about what you do. And for some people, that scarcity mindset is going to mean that they suggest way too much care that people don't actually need. But in my experience, it's frequently the opposite, that when people are afraid to spend their own money, and when people don't have supreme confidence in their product, and when people are in a financial setback themselves, they have a hard time asking someone to actually spend money on something that's supremely valuable.
Yeah.
And you owe it to your patients to actually do what's evidence-based and to be financially successful. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying, we've all got to be multimillionaires by any means, but you owe it to them to be stable enough that no matter what you're suggesting to them, you're doing it from a place of not needing the dollars that they're going to give you, because
Yeah.
that's when you're going to give out the best care. They need to go hand in hand. And yet in our industry, and to be entirely fair, in a lot of industries, people have a hard time doing that because it's almost like this kind of dirty phrasing, or they want so badly not to be the subluxation guy down the street that's x-raying babies and telling people to take out second mortgages. They want so badly not to be that they scare themselves out of actually delivering excellent care. I could ramble about this a lot, but it's just been a theme in the last few months
Yeah.
where I'm talking to a lot of docs where I'm just going like, you're not doing good care because you're trying so badly not to be that guy. You're not doing the best version of this.
Yeah, ironically, we see the evidence informed, the ethical doctor, the patient-centered doctor that has the, let's call it money struggle. They definitely shy away from recommending particular levels of care that they, know would help because they have that poverty mindset or they're having
Yeah.
that financial stress around it, and they kind of go the other way. And then, like you mentioned, some of the other types of chiropractors that are not as ethical and not patient-centered, maybe not great clinically, they end up recommending care that's just not needed just for the dollar, right? And so you see these divergence happen, and we're trying to get the really good doctors to have the conviction and the confidence to recommend what is needed and not be afraid of what the cost is for that person and not putting themselves in that buying decision. And obviously, I'm not going to just talk about that stuff when we do it, but we're going to talk a lot about business and marketing and really in a, again, patient-centered ethical way to help tie all this together. And I'm excited to be a part of it. And I do thank you for including me. I was definitely, when you reached out and we started sharing what your vision was, it just really clicked with what I had been seeing. Also, I just don't have all the clinical resources that you do to put that clinical side together. That really is the engine to make it go.
Yeah, honestly, and I've said this so many times in the last while. It's literally the thing I've been excited. It's the thing I'm most excited about in this industry for a very long time.
Mhm.
And I'm a very excitable person, especially when it comes to kind of education and helping people get better. This is the thing I've been most excited about for the last little while. And it's been 2 years in the making. I started at the end of 2024 trying to figure this whole thing out. And then last year started calling around to a bunch of people that had taken similar programs, and started calling around to people like yourself and all the other people that I just mentioned. And that was just, it's got me so excited because I have 100% certainty that if someone comes into this program and sticks around long enough, they're going to go from feeling pretty okay about their career to just feeling absolutely phenomenal. And that just excites the crap out of me, man. I'm very excited for that. It's weird to kind of ask people to have that size of a commitment, but I'm also excited because I'm asking them to commit something big, knowing they're going to get something even more enormous back. And yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm stoked.
Awesome.
Can you tell?
Share, yeah, no, share with us the kind of the format, like what it looks like conceptually for them. Like, okay, this sounds great. What's it look like?
Yeah. So essentially, it's going to be modular in that we're going to meet every week online, and that will be 1 to 2 hours. We'll meet via Zoom online. We're going to have a small group. There will be some form of teaching followed by some form of Q&A. That teaching is going to be the list of people that I just talked about, teaching in 4 to 6 week modules on their area of expertise. So, Cody's going to come in and he's going to talk about rehab and exercise and strength and conditioning. And within the first year, we're going to focus primarily on framing it all through the low back, primarily so that we don't get lost in the weeds over and over again, and we can work
Yeah.
on the system and congealing it all. Because if someone goes, what about concussion? We're off to the races. What about carpal tunnel? We're off to the races again. So we're going to kind of congeal it down into the low back. And so what we do is we do a clinical module, and then we have a short interval of a business module, and then clinical module, business module. And so we alternate like that throughout the year. And so we will have someone doing the area that they are a specific expert in, teaching a clinical module, and then we'll have a business lecture on a specific topic. And so what we do is once a quarter, we also get together to work on the actual skills that go along with all of this. So most of the time that will mean that we've gone through 2 modules. And so, for example, if we go through the module where we have talked about joint mechanics and we've talked about soft tissue, we have Brett Winchester, we have Michael Chivers, we're going to get those 2 people together in a room. Excuse me. We'll get Michael and Brett together in a room for a weekend, and all of us are going to get together and we're going to work on the specific skills, making sure we understand how to use them and how they fit together. And so we just go on that cadence year round, whereby we have 4 meetings per year that are in person. And in between those meetings, we're just alternating between clinical and business. And then a few of those modules, we're going to spend 4 or 6 weeks at a time focusing on nothing but integration, making sure that like the people that have been around and kind of get all these pieces, they know how this plays out in practice. They know how to do things like communicate it. They know how to do things like form the business around it. They know how to make it clinically excellent. They know how to take a history that uses this system really well. They know how to do a report of findings. They know how this whole thing. And so this is really meant to install an identity and a cadence of excellence into people so that once they're around for a year, everything has switched to where this just becomes their operating system. And then we can throw kind of tools on top of it. You know, we can just throw dry needling on top of it, muscle testing on top of it, whatever technique we want. But the core of what everybody does will be very, very similar because this is what the best in the world use. So we're going to modular learn that and repeat it in cycles throughout the year with different variations and probably different instructors a little bit here and there.
Oh, I love it. And then locations, you're going to kind of alternate locations throughout the year and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what we'll probably do is during the cold months, we'll go south, and during the warmer months, we'll come a little further north. Naturally, because I'm Canadian and a huge part of my following is Canadian, and a huge part of the people that I just love to work with are Canadian, we'll probably be up here. If I had to guess, we're going to do essentially the kind of 4 corners of North America. So we'll probably do somewhere northeast, somewhere southeast, somewhere northwest, somewhere southwest. And that's so that, you know, for the most part, everyone gets at least one thing that's close to home, and then they can travel to the other ones as well.
Well, Florida is in some ways a province of Canada. So don't be afraid to come down here.
Canadian plus crocodiles. Yeah.
Yes.
Alligators. Which one is it? I don't remember.
Alligators, but unfortunately we are getting a little bit of crocodiles, which are not a good thing. So
Oh no, that's not great.
you get all kinds of invasive things in Florida. It's people and animals.
The invasive Canadian species coming and apologizing for everything.
Oh, that's great. Well, this is cool. This is great. I'm excited to be a part of it. Where could our audience find out more information and look to potentially register for it when more comes out for that? Is registration open yet?
Yeah, I've got a few people registering. The way I'm doing it right now is like I'm just doing it one-on-one, meaning the people that are signed up for this thing, they're all people that have talked to me personally, and I've walked them through just to make sure we're going to be a good fit. Because what I don't want to do is because I've had these conversations. I don't want someone to come in who's just looking to kind of add another certification. I don't want someone to come in who's very new, very naive, and it's just going to be a lot, even though I think it would help them. One of the things I really care about is the peer group involved in this. I want the people who are in this to be able to help each other, and we're going to intentionally create forums where we all get to know each other kind of as a cohort. And so I've been doing it all individually, one-on-one. Easiest thing for people to do is to either email me at ben@somaticsenses.com and we can start to talk about it. Probably even easier than that is to find me on Instagram, which is just Dr. Benjamin Stevens. You'll see this face with a yellow background on it. If you go find me there, you know, or naturally, if they reach out to you, you can just kind of forward contacts or whatever. Yeah. So by the time this comes out, we'll probably be a few weeks away from launching it still. But yeah, I'm very excited about this thing.
Perfect. Exciting. Yeah, definitely. You can email me too, or reach out to me, Facebook message, whatever. If you need more info, I can send it that way as well. But I'm excited to be a part of it. Excited to be in the first year of it as well and grow from it. So thanks for putting this together and thanks for including me.
Yeah, I should be the one saying thank you. Don't get me wrong. I could try to do this whole thing myself. I could try to be the good one that gives people every last ingredient. But to me, I feel like I'd be doing people a disservice to not go find the guy who does the thing in Kevin Christie and say, can you come help? And go find the person that knows neurodynamics and say, Shacklock, can you come teach it? Yeah. Right. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about is to have all these people in the same room, in the same environment, and to have the people in here be able to be mentored and interact with these people and to have the whole system be guided. I'm supremely confident that's going to work well. And I need to be thanking you, not the other way around.
Well, I appreciate it, Ben. And this will not be our last time we're on the podcast.
Sounds good, my man. As you could probably tell, I could talk a lot. So
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you want to make the shift from busy, broke, and broken to time-free and cash confident, or you just want to continue with the exponential growth, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com. Look at the MCM Mastery tab, watch the short video on there, and check out what we are doing now for evidence-informed chiropractors. We are equal parts coaching and marketing done for you. Yes, you shoot some videos, we help you with campaign strategies and ideas and really become a thought leader in your community. You shoot those videos, you send them to us, we produce, edit, and brand them to you. Then we distribute them through all of your channels. We also take them and we turn it into one good blog per month. And every other month, we have Darcy Sullivan producing a robust blog with a topic that you pick from her database to help with your SEO. So we essentially become your content marketing agency to make sure your practice is always having ethical, elegant content marketing to help grow your practice. On the coaching side, we also help you with everything from marketing ideas to business, communications, finances, anything practice growth, and really try to help prevent you from being stuck on that island. And we hold you accountable. We have a great group of doctors that are just doing amazing things, and we look forward to help you out to take that next step in your practice. So again, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com and learn more.